If you with it, drop it.
Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. I am excited to introduce you to my audience. You are a Enneagram expert. Your website is the Enneagram for Life, and it focuses on personal development, personal growth, relationship health, but also leadership and development. So, tell me a little bit about how you got involved in this, Laura, and tell us about Enneagrams and a little bit of
Sure.
background about you.
Sure. As far as me and getting introduced to the Enneagram, my background is actually in community development, community organizing, mission work through churches for many years.
That's how we
And
met.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I started really heading down the journey of, oh gosh, I don't know. I worked with youth groups for a while, but then social justice became a passion. And then back in 2018, I went through multiple changes in my life. I went through a divorce after 30 years of being married. Our twins left for college that year. So it was just a big upheaval in the family system for me.
Okay.
And I was feeling burned out from some of the work that I had done. I had overworked for many years as far as just really, yeah, grinding it. And I left my job at the church and also went just through some faith evolution, some faith deconstruction. So just a lot of changes for me in one time. And a friend had given me a book on the Enneagram, and I had let it sit around on a bookshelf for like 2 years. And I picked it up just kind of divinely, I think, at one point, and it was so incredibly helpful. It opened my eyes to some blind spots that I just was unaware of. And I think the power of the Enneagram system is, it's this personality system, but it's holistic in nature. And it describes kind of these 9 general different lenses that people, see the world. And of course, we're complex human beings, so we're not all just exactly like 9 different types, but it's uncanny how accurate it is. And so I learned a lot about myself through it, and not only about my strengths and my gifts, but also about some of my shadow side and some of the patterns that were playing on automatic, under my life that I thought, oh, because the Enneagram really is a system that works to get to our motivations. What are our core fears? What are our core desires? Why do we think and feel and act like we do? It's not so much about the what, it's about the why underneath. And it very fascinating. So it was just a powerful tool in my own journey. And I wanted to, it helped me with my grown children, understand them. They know which types they are. And it's been super helpful for me to understand what their focus of attention is on, and where their core fears are, and what they're paying attention to. And it just helps me so much in knowing how they're going to kind of show up in situations. So it's just been great.
Okay, all right. So let's go back to the transition part, right? Like my audience and myself even we are in transition. And when you're in transition and you're required to show up, right? As like
Mhm.
you said, you're going through these huge family where, children are moving out and your relationship ended or changed, and even the reconstruction of faith, right? So when we
Mhm.
go through transitions, do you look at transitions as a breakdown to build up? Or do you look at how do you look at transitions, and how can that relate to the view of like the Enneagram, like that
Ooh, that's a good
way that you look
question.
at it? Yeah.
And so I would say, even part of my type can get really, really sucked down and get stuck in that. But I think the work of the Enneagram is honestly that understanding and that compassion to help us understand ourselves rather than judge ourselves or judge others. It's just more of that self-awareness and that growing in understanding and more of an objective witness. Like these are patterns, these are structures that I can learn about, and I can see them, how they've played out in my past, but they don't have to define me. In fact, I think a lot of times I just felt like I was my thoughts and my feelings and my behaviors. The Enneagram has helped me see I am someone beyond my personality. My personality is a bit of a costume, a bit of an armor. There is more to me, as far as I have other options. These patterns don't have to drive me, right? So I think a lot of times it's great suffering that helps us, right? In transformation, right? So I think there's a period of time that is really a time of grief and uncertainty.
Cultural influences absolutely shape our identity. So when we start thinking about how we identify in the world,
Mhm.
like our
Yeah.
personality, like you brought up that the Enneagram really taught you that you are actually beyond just your personality. So let's go
Mhm.
back to that thought
Okay.
and let's kind of explore that so we can understand a little better on how we identify in terms of building our personality and cultural influences and learned behaviors and all of those things,
Sure.
and how we can kind of see beyond that, or like what does that mean? What is that distinction about? Like
Sure.
about that.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you an example from myself. It took me a long time to know which type I was because I have a pretty strong wing. But I identify as a type 2. And
Okay.
a type 2 is someone who fears rejection and really wants to be liked and approved of, and does that often through helping other people, like needing to be needed and almost to a point of being indispensable, right? Like I can meet everybody else's needs and then I neglect my own needs a lot of times, or don't even recognize what they are. So through learning that, I recognized how boundaryless I was. I was terrible with boundaries. I'd say yes far more than I said no. It helped me notice the pattern and then ask myself, oh, before I say yes to this, let me examine why I would say yes to this, is like what's underneath the yes. Um, um, Type 2 often has a lot of pride and it can exist in two ways. That's kind of the two's Achilles heel is pride. So they can have an inflated view of themselves or a deflated view of themselves. And so I am learning to kind of objectively notice in me, like when my pride is either creating a greater sense of inflation of myself or a deflated sense of myself. I'm trying to learn to be have a right view of myself, if that makes sense. So a lot of it is in observation and reflection.
Let's say that you're saying, like when I think about being an 8, then I think the part that really connects to me is I can be a challenger, right? About like I'm about equality, and like those are things that I see and I look for the spaces. I look for the gaps. You know what I mean? Whereas somebody else may look at something different, right? And so then you talked about some of the things you talked about. I can relate to that too. Maybe I got a 2 wing. I don't know, but but you talked about kind of being having this fear of rejection, right? But if someone was to hear what we're saying, then they might say, well, because you are a African American woman and you grow up, in an environment that sits at the intersection of these, racism and sexism, then that
Yeah.
maybe that is what created or made you go into being
Right.
that type of way. Or maybe, right, the human experience, nobody wants to be rejected, so everybody is like Laura,
Absolutely.
and there are two. So if
Mm,
if our experiences, right, are framing the way that we see the world, then
yes.
how can the Enneagram system effectively put us in those categories? And how do we engage with them with also honoring our own experiences and perspectives of how we show up in the world, or how we have shown up in the past, or how we were raised, or our cultural things like,
Well, first of all, I think we do have little bits of all of the numbers, right? There's one that's a core number. We don't change out of the number. We can evolve. We can become aware. We can kind of move beyond some of the trappings of our personalities. But our personalities also have real gifts to bear in the world. So when you speak of social justice and equality and being a protector and a challenger, those are huge gifts to offer the world. So I don't live in your shoes, but I do know, the type 8 has kind of this, what I talk about is like the I need to and I can't be's. So type 8s I need to be strong. I
mm,
can't be weak. And a lot of times vulnerability seems like weakness to a type 8. Do you think that's true?
I absolutely think that's
Okay.
true. That's
I see the world as harsh and unjust, and I'm going to hold tight to my cards and it's going to take some work to gain that trust, right? That to me seems like that would make sense from your lived experience. Is that true?
yes, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely right
yeah.
on.
Yeah, so all of that, I mean, our past is part of the way we condition and I call our personalities like I have this activity in workshops where it's Play-Doh and I have a diamond center. We all have our diamond self, our diamond center. It's our soul, it's our non-constructed self. We inherently belong and are unconditionally loved and inherently worthy, right? It's what we all long for, our highest self and truest self to manifest in the world, right? You called it embody the powerhouse within on your website, right?
Yes.
So we have that, all of us, and then we develop these personalities in different shapes to protect us. To they have gifts. Sometimes can over identify with them, right? And sometimes we assert ourselves in ways to gain approval, to gain control, to gain security. And so sometimes we overdo it. Sometimes we overdo that. We over identify, and it can create harm or limits for ourselves. It can kind of harm others, our impact on others. And so the whole work of the Enneagram is like, how do we begin to notice some of that? How do we tap into our diamond self, right? Create some space so that we can see that, oh, I want to call up that love, that higher self, that courage, that sense of security with what I have within, and not just try to assert myself in ways that are harmful. So I think, like for a type 8, um, I think it's a mix of nature and nurture how we develop our personalities, right? But just noticing those things, like where might I be overplaying the lack of vulnerability, and where might I get a little softer, or so a lot of it is in that
Absolutely.
observation and reflection. Am I answering anything?
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
When I think about showing up, right? This new book that I'm thinking about, people think it's just about like what we wear or having confidence, but it's really about this. It's really
Yeah.
about at some level, I'm not doing the Enneagram, but it's about this idea of recognizing what's at play here and how can I lead in a way that can get to the desired outcome versus this is just who I am, deal with it. And that's just who you are. And you avoid conflicts, so you're weak and I'm strong. And, creating these boxes of separation, it's like, how can we get to the desired outcome that we both want to get to, or we all want to get to? And how can I be aware enough to know how I need to show up in order to influence that without losing myself, right? My question to you is how do we find that balance where we are able to really understand and hold on to who we are, even in those moments of um, where our maybe our uh livelihood is on the line, our relationships are on the line, right? When you think about leadership, and also you work with relationships, so when you think about that, how can I maintain who I am but then also create the awareness? And
First of all, I wanted to say, as a type 8 and as a Black woman, that is a challenging type because of patriarchy. I mean, male type 8s are much better received or easily received than a woman type 8, right? And so for you to be able to show up in your beautiful full self is a challenge as an 8, because 8s are a big personality and a direct personality and a challenging personality. None of us should have to give up who we are, right? So I think the work is in learning about ourselves, our strengths, our where we shine, right? What gifts we do bring. And then also learning, I mean, a lot of it is just we can only work on ourselves, right? And so understanding the shadow, understanding the limits, what patterns keep showing up that I can sense inside of myself, I would like there to be change, right? Not what somebody else is telling
right,
me, right?
I think that your answer is perfect in terms of really understanding the essence of who we are.
Mhm.
But I think that a lot of us lack
Mm.
the awareness
Yeah,
of who we really are.
yeah.
And so we're going through the world and we're holding up things that people applaud,
Mm.
right?
Right.
And saying, yes, this is who I am. And like you said, we can beat ourselves up for things that people don't applaud, right? Things
Mhm.
that create conflict. And it's like, no, I don't want to be that, And so we're going and negotiating. And wow, this has been a really great conversation, because I'm like, why I mean, it's necessary work, so I want to do it, but it also is very confronting. Like I've never had a really deep workshop or retreat where someone's ego didn't like rise up and bark back, and I'm like, this is not I'm not even, I'm just creating a space, you know what I mean? And because they didn't want to see something in themselves, then it was like a conflict, of within themselves. Like, are you trying to embarrass me, or are you trying to do this? And I'm like,
Mhm.
no, you know what I mean? And so it
Mhm.
just it's just so confronting to do this work and for people to see themselves, and people cry, and people, I mean, it's an emotional journey. And I'm like, why did you choose this, Nicole? You know what I mean? But it's so
Because
necessary because I'm
yes,
pink, I
so
guess.
necessary. And then to recognize, like, yeah, the personality or the ego's defense mechanisms come up, right? Those armors, they come up for protection and like to avoid things, right? So that's, yeah, oh, yeah, it's not easy. It's such good, important work you're doing, though.
Thank you so much. Like I said, I could talk to you all day, but I have to respect your time because we already are like, this has been a great interview though. And
Thank
if
you.
if if someone wants to find you, which I know people after this interview are gonna want to find you, tell them how they can work with you. Where can they find you? Are you on social media?
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. The name of my business is the Wholehearted Journey. And so I'm at thewholeheartedjourney.org. And I do have a Facebook and Instagram. I'm more active on Facebook at this point. And then, yeah, you can find all my services online. I'm on LinkedIn as well. That's where you and I connected.
Yes.
So, yeah, or just, you can set up a time to talk with me on consultation as well. So I'd be happy to visit with you.
And you work with individuals, organizations, and relationships. Is that
Yeah,
that's
I
correct,
do.
right? Okay,
That's
got
right.
it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time and imparting your being so open and willing to share the information and your journey with us. We appreciate it, and I know it's going to be beneficial to anybody that's listening.
So
Thank you.
thanks, Nicole. Keep on keeping on. You're doing great work.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, let